We are broadcasting live from Children's Hospital of Wisconsin. My name is Corey. I work on the social media team, and today I'm joined by Paulette Durankowitz, who is a foster parent advocate within our community services team. And today we're talking about the steps involved in becoming a foster or adoptive parent. We're going to learn what the experience is really like, and we're going to talk about why there's such a need for foster and adoptive parents across the state of Wisconsin. And we would love to hear from you. So if you have questions about becoming a foster or adoptive parent, please post your questions in the comment section of this video, and we'll try to answer as many as we can throughout our live broadcast. For those of you tuning in right now, please click the like button or click the share button and let us know you're watching. We really appreciate your feedback. With that, I'd like to introduce you to Paulette. Paulette, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So to begin with, can you describe your role as a foster parent advocate within our community services team? What does that mean?
Well, I've been a foster parent for more than 10 years, and about 5 years ago, we started a position at the community services for an actual foster parent to help navigate the system for other foster parents. So I meet people who are wanting to become a foster parent at our new family informational meetings, and then I help them from the time that they put their application in all throughout the entire time of the case until the child achieves permanency. So I'll help them if they have any questions or concerns, if there's any issues coming up with the staff or the families, or issues that they're having with children. I'm kind of the go-to gal to help them navigate the system.
And can you describe maybe your family's experience through foster care and adoption?
Sure. We started fostering two little children that were members of our church, and we fostered them for 16 months until they actually went back home. And we started the process just to provide that safe, loving home for the children until they were able to go back home. And we fostered 5 children, and after that 5th one left, it just kind of broke our hearts. That child moved to a beautiful adoptive home. Actually, their adoptive parents are both employees of the hospital, and it just broke our hearts when that last child left. And so my husband and I then decided that we would become adoptive parents, and we went through the adoptive home study and were approved. We have fostered 30 children and have expanded our family when we adopted 8 of our foster children.
So just to be clear, you fostered 30 children.
30.
And you have 8 adopted children.
Correct. We have 3 biological children and 8 adopted children.
And your biological children are adults now?
They are adults.
And what's the youngest in your family?
3. We have 2 3-year-olds.
That sounds like a lot on your hands.
I'm a busy gal.
Now, you talked a little bit already about maybe the motivation to go into the adoption side.
Yes.
What was the initial motivation for you and your family on the foster care side? Talk about that.
Well, I always say that fostering chose me. I didn't
Yeah.
choose to become a foster parent. Fostering chose me. I was actually in a meeting, and this cute little boy just crawled over and sat in my lap, and I jokingly said to who I thought at the time were his parents, "Can I have him?" And I had then found out that the woman who I thought was the mom was actually an aunt who was providing kinship care for her niece and nephew, and just that day had called the agency and stated that they could no longer provide fostering for either one of the children, and had given their notice to say that they needed to find another home. And she told me this story, and I went home and talked to my husband, and we agreed to start fostering those kids, and that's how our journey began.
And with so many children having that experience in your family, talk a little bit about how rewarding it is for your family to give that experience to these children.
Not only is it rewarding for us to be able to watch a child heal from the trauma that they have experienced. My goal for that first little girl that we fostered was for her just to be 3. Because of the experiences that she was far older than 3. She wouldn't play. She very much took care of her younger brother. And that was just my goal. And it took us about 6 or 7 months. And one day I walked in, and she was just playing with a doll. She had her back turned towards her brother, who she had always been his protector. And she was just playing and not concerned about the safety of her brother. And that was just such a phenomenal experience to see this little girl actually playing and being 3.
Looks like we have a question from our Facebook
good.
fans.
So Doris asked, I'm curious about what the training actually entails. What do you learn in the hours of training? What other support is given along the way as situations come up? Can you explain the process maybe a little bit?
Sure. So after you are accepted into the program, it's an application process. After you're accepted into the program, there is 3 3-hour classes that we go through prior to you being able to accept placement of a child. We call those our pre-placement classes. And then during the first 2 years of licensure, there are 11 additional classes that you need to take, all 3 hours each, that will talk about the court system or discipline, various trauma-type behaviors and things like that. Plus, we have a phenomenal, the best foster parent community out there, and we provide support 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for our foster parents. So any questions that anybody has, any issues that come up, you have real live foster parents that are there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for you.
And now you talked a little bit about trauma, and
Yes.
can you help me understand maybe, I'm assuming you're talking about some of the experiences and the families that these children are were in before they went into foster care.
Correct.
Can you talk a little bit about who some of these children are and maybe some of the scenarios that might have brought them into the foster care world?
One of the things that I like to make sure people understand is children don't put themselves into foster care. They are placed into foster care because of situations that occur within their family that they have absolutely no control over. So things such as, sadly, we have such a overwhelming drug and alcohol addiction issue here in Milwaukee County. We have a very limited amount of mental health services that many of our biological families have access to. So we have parents who maybe are very open and willing to taking care of their child, but in the instance of I have 2 3-year-olds, and in the instance of one of my 3-year-olds, their parents just had such cognitive delays that they weren't able to meet the special needs of this very, very premature baby that they had. And so he had to be placed in foster care for his own safety. So there has to be some type of a safety concern for the child to be taken into care. And throughout the entire life of the case, that's what we're working on, making sure that the child gets back into a safe home so that they can be reunified with their parents.
It sounds like the people then who stand up and participate in the foster care system are really doing a huge benefit to these families and specifically these children. Is that right?
Absolutely.
How would you describe some of the people that you've met throughout your work in foster care? What types of characteristics do they have? What are they looking for? What type of people are they that stand up and say, I'll be a foster parent?
I always want people to realize that there is nothing special about a person who becomes a foster parent. We are just people who stood up to say yes. We are people who want to help and to make a difference in a person's life and stick with it. Oftentimes, people will think about fostering and they'll think about it for years and maybe not make that initial phone call. And so what I do is I invite people just to come. I just met a woman yesterday and invited her to come to an informational meeting. It's something that she had been thinking about, becoming a foster parent for a while. And so just to come in to hear what the foster care system is like and make that decision for yourself. We're not looking for perfect people by any means. We are just looking for people who are willing to open up their homes to provide these kids a safe, loving atmosphere.
That's wonderful. Looks like we have some more questions from our Facebook fans.
Yeah, we've got quite a few questions coming in. Heather had asked, how long is the approval process for fostering and kind of what does it include? Is there certain criteria that you have to have in order to be a foster parent?
We typically will license people within 90 days. Sometimes that can take a little bit longer if a person's maybe lived out of state or whatever the case may be. And there's background checks, of course, that have to go on. There's an actual home study that is done just as if you were to go through maybe a private adoption agency. It's the same type of a home study that goes on to make sure that you have the financial resources. Your home needs to be a specific size so that it's a reasonable amount of room for the children. And any type of, if you have any hiccups in your background, those things need to be explored as well.
And this is all for the well-being of the child.
Absolutely.
Right.
All right, we've got some more questions. Can you choose the foster child?
We like to say that we don't choose the foster children, it's the families that are chosen for the child. So they look for the perfect or the best fit of the family for the child, not the opposite way.
All right, and then one more. Kristen had asked, can you foster if your end goal is to really adopt at some point?
You absolutely may. The one thing, though, to remember is we are a foster care agency. We are not an adoption agency. Our main goal almost all of the time is to reunify our children with their biological families. That's our main goal. To be sure, we have children who are available for adoption, and we would love to have people come in to explore that.
Talk a little bit more about what you just described, that the idea of reunifying a child with their biological family. Because I would imagine as a foster parent, you grow very connected to this child that's come into your house.
Correct.
For a lot of reasons. But you took on this responsibility knowing that you want this child to go back to their family, right? Talk about what that's like to say goodbye to that child after you've got to know them so well.
Well, I tell people that every single child that comes into your home deserves for your heart to break when they leave. They very much deserve that. And the day that your heart stops breaking when a child leaves your home is the day you should turn in your foster care license.
Yeah.
And as the adult, we should take the hit. So we fall in love with these children and we provide them with everything that we would for a biological child. And when they leave, especially when we start maintaining relationships with the biological family, oftentimes when the kids go back home, we still stay involved in the child's life. We can provide respite or parenting help for the parents so we're able to stay involved in the kids' lives when they go home.
You just mentioned something called respite care.
Yes.
And I think we also offer something called treatment foster care.
Yes.
Let's take a minute and understand what each of those mean. Let's start with the respite care. What does that mean?
Respite care is a temporary type of babysitter, if you will. It's another licensed foster home that can provide a couple of days of a break. Sometimes our children can be very challenging, and other times just to maintain your relationships with your spouse, you need to have maybe that weekend alone or things like that. And the foster care system will help you find another licensed foster home who has the same training that you do to take care of the children while you take a little bit of a break.
So it sounds like respite care is one of many of these resources you talked about
Yes.
to support foster families
Correct.
through this journey.
Correct.
Now, what is treatment foster care? What does that mean?
Treatment foster care is a higher level of needs for the child, either medical, most likely it's behavioral needs. Some of our children come with some very challenging behaviors, and our treatment foster homes have a higher level of training, more hours that they're required. They have more intensive supervision, weekly meetings with the case manager, and any other supports that they may need are given to them to help maintain placement of these children.
Okay. Jason on Facebook had asked, "Are pets okay?"
Yes.
And we're in the middle of a home remodeling project. Will that count against us?
Pets are absolutely okay as long as they are socialized. They do need to have their vaccinations. Nothing above and beyond.
Okay.
Oftentimes, our children are afraid of animals, and that is one of the resources that we have in the foster parent community, helping our new foster parents learn how to introduce your child to the pet or your pet to the child so that they can have a good relationship. Kids love growing up with animals, so
Yeah.
absolutely. And as far as the home remodeling project, as long as it's not a safety concern,
Right.
there's no reason why that should stop anyone.
Okay. Looks like we have more questions from our Facebook fans.
Yes, we've got quite a few coming in here. Someone had asked about the cost. Can you talk a little bit about the cost? It seems that adoption is relatively expensive. Can you
Very.
talk a little bit about how much it would cost or anything to the cost of it?
There is no charge for foster parents or adoptive parents to get the home study or to do the adoption with at the point of adoption, it's around $50. There's two separate fees to change the birth certificate and a filing fee that actually can be reimbursed to you through the state. So the cost for a home study including adoption is zero at the end of the day.
Okay.
Thank you. And then, how do you find out about additional information, additional foster parents in your area? How could people find out if they're currently trying to look into fostering?
You could go on to the chw.org website. We have our foster care blog that is written by a variety of foster parents. You can sign on to our Facebook page, which is Connecting Bridges Milwaukee, which is our foster parent association, and start asking questions or reading and hearing about real life experiences with other foster parents and other people involved in the foster care system.
And just to follow up on that,
Yes.
so the website again, it's chw.org.
.org.
Then the blog is actually at kidhero.chw.org.
Yes.
And you mentioned the Facebook page.
Correct.
If they wanted to call us, the phone number is 414-KID-HERO.
Correct.
So we got that out there as well. Courtney, did you have another question from our
Yeah.
fans?
What is the process like to become an emergency foster family? Can this process turn into adoption in the long run as well?
Absolutely. We used to use more emergency type homes. Some people used to call it a receiving home. The child would stay in the home for about 30 days until that they could match them up with a family. We are really shying away from that. We believe that we would like the first placement to be the child's last placement. Children need stability, and they're going through such a chaotic time from being removed from their biological families that we really don't want to uproot them. But absolutely, anytime that you get a child into your home, if that child becomes adoptable, the vast majority of our children who are adopted by their original foster parents.
And then I just have one more that's kind of, they're all coming in together about working. Can parents
Yes.
work and like have jobs and still be foster parents? What if they're between jobs?
We absolutely have our foster parents who are working. Daycare is then paid for by the state, so that is something that is not a cost to the foster parents. You do need to have some income in order to afford. Kids are expensive, so we need to be able to work so that we can pay our bills and afford the children. But like I said, the W-2 does cover our daycare expenses for our foster kids.
Now, when you go through the licensing process to
Yeah.
become a foster parent, how quickly can you learn that a child might be available to you? Do you have any lead time, or are you always ready? How does that work, I guess?
You're always ready.
Yeah.
The phone call can come in from the time that you get licensed, depending upon if you are wanting to foster, say, an infant from 0 to 12 months with very minimal needs. You may be waiting longer.
And that's a choice you could make.
Absolutely.
I see.
Absolutely.
And are there greater needs for younger children versus teenagers, or does that play into this at all?
We always have a need for fostering older children. Absolutely. Overwhelmingly.
And you mean like
12 and above.
12 and above.
10 and above, especially for our boys. One of the things, like I said, was told to me by a teen who had aged out of foster care was to remind people that kids don't put themselves in foster care. It's not because of what they have done, it's because what their parents have done. And just because a child is older does not mean that they don't need a parent. I'm 50 years old and I still need my mom.
Courtney, it looks like we have another question from our Facebook fans.
Yeah, can I be involved with fostering through Children's Hospital Resources if I live in a different county, or are these options only available to people that live in the Milwaukee County?
No, they can be licensed in surrounding counties. We have offices all over the state, and just to contact the agency that's closest to your county.
If they were to contact us, would we be able to route them to,
Yes.
to their appropriate agency? Or?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. One of the questions I had here came from Melissa, and she asked, do you need references or letters of recommendations from non-family members?
We like to have from both family members who have known you forever and also from outside sources as well.
Okay, and we talked a little bit about the biological family. So that's
Yes.
the family that the child was originally
Child of
in.
origin,
As a foster parent, do you have communication with the biological family? What is that relationship like, or what could it be like, and does it vary?
It does vary. Depends upon. Sometimes we have parents who are incarcerated. We have parents sometimes who have passed away, and maybe there isn't a parent. But I always liken it to if you have a divorced family. nobody can argue the fact that if mom in one home and dad in another home can get together and support one another with visitation or with school projects or with discipline, make joint medical decisions, that the child would be better off. And when we throw fostering in the mix, it's no different. The children always do better when the birth parent and the foster parent get along, can talk. We've had experiences that we've had our biological families actually coming into our home to do the visits for our one guy who's very medically needy. It just made more sense. Otherwise, he would have had to have traveled with a nurse. And so we would have family members come into our home. One of our moms was a teen mom when she had her little guy. And she would come over every Sunday for dinner or to do her laundry because the place that she lived in, it was a coin-operated laundromat and funds were short. So I would have her come over. She would visit with her child and use my washer and dryer just like any other kid who would move away from home.
Great. Now, for everybody watching right now on Facebook, do us a favor, click the like button, click the share button, and let us know you're watching. We really appreciate that feedback. And Courtney, it looks like we have more questions from our Facebook fans.
Yeah, Kelsey asked, can the foster parent pick the daycare?
It has to be a Young Star rating of 3 or above for a child to be in foster care, for W-2 to pay for it.
And kind of just going along with that, how do things work with school-age children if they go to school and they live further away from the school than where the family that's fostering lives?
Because most children have their safety in a place where their physical needs are being met, so where they are safe, where they are fed, where they feel comfortable. For a lot of our children, the safest place for them has been school. It's where they get 2 meals a day. It's where they get positive touch and feedback. It is very important for our kids to be able to stay in their school of origin, at least for the first year. And so we make concessions. We allow for foster parents who will drive their children back and forth to their school of origin to have their mileage reimbursed and things like that. It's just better for the child. And because that's what this is all about, what's better for the children, that's an expectation.
And then typically, Paulette, are food and clothing and extra activities covered by the foster parents? I know some of it's reimbursed, but
Foster parents do receive a monthly stipend to help offset the cost. Children 0 to 5 are all eligible for WIC, our Women, Infant, and Children program. And we have a phenomenal resource called the Robin's Nest. That is a huge warehouse building that's on a lot of community services that is filled with toys and clothing and bottles and books and things like that for our foster parents that are free of charge.
And then I have one more question that I'll let you guys get back to your list of questions. Can you foster a child if you already have a big family, including a child with special needs?
Absolutely, absolutely. As long as we have, there's space requirements and things like that that you will find out about during the licensing process, but there's no limit to the amount of love that a parent has. According to state guidelines, we can provide care for 8 children under the age of 18. So as long as we're not going above that, they're
foster
welcome.
Kids. That's you can care for 8 different foster kids, or 8 kids in the household.
8 kids total.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
So what if you're not married, single?
That's perfectly welcome to apply.
Okay, so you don't need to be married.
You do not.
Okay.
You do not.
We have a question here from Isabel on Facebook who asked, can you choose the age of the child? And then we had another question from Amy somebody who asked, are you able to meet the child beforehand?
When you go through your licensing process, you and your licensing worker talk about what would be the best age range fit for your family.
Okay.
So you are absolutely able to state, I would like to provide care for kids from age 8 to 12. You can say boys only, girls only. You can say that you want to take siblings or a single child. And what was the second question? I'm sorry.
So can you meet the child before you accept them into your home as foster parents?
Sure. About 80% of our children are actually removed on an emergency basis. And so we have foster parents who are willing to say, as long as they meet within these guidelines, that they would be willing to take them. If you are meeting a child for adoption purposes, there is always those pre-placement visits that we have prior to the child coming into your home.
Courtney, it looks like we have another question from our Facebook fans.
Yes, there was a question Does Children's offer adoption for people who do not wish to foster first?
In the state of Wisconsin, you have to foster a child for a minimum of 6 months before an adoption can be approved. So even if you do a private adoption, you are still fostering that child until that adoption can actually be legalized. So through the foster care system, as I stated earlier, we are not an adoption agency. We do have the requirement that we have to follow through the state laws that we are fostering the child for a minimum of 6 months.
Thank you. And there's a couple more. Becky had asked, how many cases would you say end up with the children returning to their family compared to the children being adopted? Can you speak a little bit about that?
It's estimated that approximately 85% of our children who come into the foster care system are actually reunified with their birth families, usually within the first year.
And then the last one, are there any plans on getting the training classes to be online if it's a little bit difficult for parents to make the trainings, but they do want to become foster parents?
In Milwaukee County, we do face-to-face training. In other counties, they do them online. There is some talks that some of the classes will be offered online, but I will tell you that the benefit of having that face-to-face with our foster parent classes are usually co-facilitated by a foster parent and a social worker. And just to have that community, building up your community of support is beyond beneficial.
And then one last question Diane had asked. We know that you get a little bit of training beforehand, but do you get help after the placement is made in your home, like resources?
Absolutely. That is my primary role, actually. We have our licensing workers who are available. We have the case manager who is available. Myself, as the foster parent advocate, I have my phone on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it's utilized 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We have, again, our foster parent community who, hands down, is going to be our best support and resources because they are the people who have gone through this and are living this life with you and are there to support you.
And because I think we want to show folks what the real experience is like, can you speak a little bit to maybe what are some of the most common questions or challenges that foster parents come to you about during their foster care journey?
Most of it is about specific behaviors. Like I said, these children come to us from backgrounds that they may have experienced neglect or abuse, and our kids don't have, just because they're children, they don't have the verbal capacity to be able to sit down to say, boy, I'm scared, or where's my mom, or why did this happen to me? They don't have that verbalization to be able to do that. So their fear and their anxiety comes out in behaviors. And because it's such a different world, typically those are the biggest questions that I have, like how to manage a specific behavior.
Now, I would imagine there are a lot of people who don't know or didn't know that Children's Hospital of Wisconsin does this type of work in the community.
Right.
Can you speak a little bit to what our community services team is doing in Milwaukee and really across the state and the impact it's having?
We have a variety of recruitment events that will happen throughout the communities throughout the state to try and recruit foster parents. We have retention events to keep our foster parents engaged within our community. And that's just an ongoing process.
Yeah, and so much of the work we do, I think, is a lot of the work we do is outside the walls of our hospital.
Yes.
And the foster care and adoption services and resources we provide is just one example of so much of what we do that's not inside a hospital.
Right.
It's just amazing to hear you talk about that. Courtney, it looks like we have some more questions from our Facebook fans.
Yes. Are foster children required to go through counseling or anything like that while they're in foster care?
They are not required, but the vast majority of our foster kids do. That is another service that we offer, that we have a phenomenal counseling service provided by Children's Hospital through community services as well.
And then there was another question that came through that said, you talked about space requirements and bedroom requirements. Can they find those online, or is there a certain number you have to have a bedroom for every kid, or how does that work?
Foster children can share bedrooms. Same-gendered children can share, opposite-gendered children can share bedrooms up until the age of 6. Once they turn 6, they have to be in a bedroom with a same-gender child. It's 40 square feet per child per bedroom space. In their bedroom space, each child needs to have 40 square feet within the bedroom itself. But those are things that get discussed during our licensing process.
Thank you. And then I've got a couple more. If they come from an abusive family, are you more likely to have them adopted or have them returned to their family?
That's all on a case-by-case basis. The amount of services and therapies and classes that the birth parents get is astounding to help parents make these sustainable life changes is one of the amazing resources that Children's Hospital Community Services offers our parents so that they are able to help get their kids back.
Thank you. And then I have two more. Katie asked, do you have kids waiting to be adopted that have already been awarded to the state, meaning I could foster to see if it's a good fit, but wouldn't have their parents trying to get them back?
There are some children who are what we call post-TPR, so post-termination of parental rights. Milwaukee County typically does not like to make orphans of children, and we do have children who are waiting for their adoptive parents to step forward before that final court date of terminating the rights.
Thank you. And then I have two more. Can you speak to the impact of fostering children on a foster parent's biological children? I could imagine both benefits and challenges to a foster parent's biological children.
Well, I will share a personal story. A few months ago, my husband's brother suddenly passed away, and they live up north. He left behind a wife and 4 children. And our son, who's 24, actually left his life here and moved up north to help my sister-in-law with the kids. And when I was talking to him about that was pretty impressive, that here he's 24 and giving up his life, moving to a small community to help his aunt with the children. He said, "Mom, that's just what you raised me to do." So our biological children, although they will have negative things happen, it's an emotionally exhausting for our biological children. Oftentimes we're taking time away from our biological children to help these kids heal. But living this life of giving of yourself is nothing that they can ever learn from a book. It's something that they learn because of a life that's lived out in front of them.
Thank you.
So as we come to the end of our broadcast, if there are folks who are watching right now who are on the edge, they're considering making that call to learn about the process of becoming a foster parent, what would you tell them?
Make the call. Just make the call. You can come to a new family informational meeting. It is absolutely, nobody's going to force you into signing paperwork to sign up. You can go online to chw.org to learn more, or you can call 414-KID-HERO and sign up for an informational meeting. That's all that you need to do. Sometimes we have people come in for an informational meeting and a year later is when they start filling out the paperwork. Just come in, you'll hear from a real live foster parent and a member of the agency staff to help you answer more questions and find out more about our program.
Well, Paulette, thank you so much for joining us today. It just amazes me to hear your story, and the work we do here is just so incredibly valuable to kids in Milwaukee and across the state of Wisconsin. And for everybody watching, if you want to learn more, there's a couple things you can do. You can give us a call at 414-KID-HERO. You can visit our website at chw.org, or you can visit our foster care and adoption blog at kidhero.chw.org. Thanks so much, Paulette.
Thank
I really
you,
appreciate
Corey.
it.